Just to get us moving forward so we're not here all day, I'm going to highlight a couple of things as we move into this. If you're a member of Hillside Community Church, you will have received an email from this guy over here, Mike Flack. Check your junk mail, and that email includes a link to be able to go to the voting forms that we've created. Those voting forms are anonymous, confidential. We're not going to post names up here on the screen. We're not going to ask you to raise your hands. We've always kind of done things that way, and I want to make sure that we continue to move that way. So Mike has set up a form. If you don't see that email or don't have access to that email, then come up and see Mike Flack. Or if you believe you're a member and didn't get the email, come and see Mike Flack. Fair? Excellent. So I'll let you guys kind of sift through that. It's going to be simple. All you got to do is put your first, last name, your email address. The email address is only going in there to send you an email confirmation of your vote, just so you know that it was processed correctly. We only have two things we're voting on. We're voting on the 2022 budget and the bringing on of Dave Eicher as an elder. So those are going to be the only two voting things that we have, but we are going to walk through a whole bunch of stuff today. Not too in-depth, but I hope Izzy's a member, just because, right? I know, that'd be a little awkward to find out today. The Eichers are not members. So Jeff, are we up and rolling online? Okay, so everyone online, the same is true. So for you guys, if you're members, make sure you get that email. Make sure you go to that and check that out. Jeff is going to be checking both Facebook and YouTube. If you've got any comments online that you want to be addressed here, you need to put them into the comment section of either Facebook, our page, or the YouTube stuff. And then Jeff will contact me. He'll raise his hand violently in the back saying, "We have a question." And then he'll probably read that question out. I'll recite it again just so we make sure everyone's able to participate in what's going on. Cool? Good? All right. Welcome. I'm going to call the 2022 Hillside Business Meeting to order. Tom, second that motion. Okay, we're good. We're doing it. He's our parliamentarian, and so we want to make sure we run through, make sure we're doing everything legal, right, Tom? So the first thing I want to do is kind of step back and just look at mission and vision for us. As you guys know, this is our mission statement for Hillside Community Church, and it says this, that we are dedicated to the evangelism, encouragement, and equipping of believers to be fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ, preparing believers to minister to the people God has sovereignly placed in their lives, fulfilling the Great Commission. Our focus is outreach, our resource is the Holy Spirit, and our purpose is to bring glory and praise to God. So that's who we are, and it's been who we've been for 20 years plus. I created this little fun diagram because I like to take things and break them apart and make sure that we are who we say we are, that we take the things that we believe, that alignment and action thing. Dan and Jen have got that. I mean, I ask that almost every day. Is this in alignment with my values? So the same thing's true here. So what I did is this priority part up top really focuses on the three areas within our mission statement: God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We've been asked by all three of the Godhead to be specific in some of the things that we do. So our decision process needs to be funneled through these areas. One, are the things that we're doing bringing honor and praise to God? And if the answer is a thumbs up, we do it. If it's a thumbs down, we don't. The next, are we about what Jesus has asked of us, to become fully devoted followers of Him, where He is our Lord, and we are out being about the Great Commission, where we're sharing our lives with people around us? Again, thumbs up, thumbs down. And then the Holy Spirit. And we really move in a place here, if you've been here long enough, you recognize we don't always make great business decisions, but we do try to make the best spiritual decisions possible. So we seek out the Holy Spirit in every area, and if we as a church are not moving together, we take the time that we need to make sure that we are. And so that's what that talks about, that it's not me or you who provide. The Holy Spirit utilizes who we are and he is our resource. So we're constantly asking, are we living in God's economy? And then through that funnel becomes kind of two different areas of ministry. One, for the building up, the equipping of us as believers. People that are followers of Jesus Christ, you need to be in a position where you're growing, you're maturing, you're being equipped, you're being challenged. And so as believers, we want to make sure as a congregation, we continue to do that. And then there are those that don't know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. So as that focus, we want to make sure that we are inviting people, we are engaging in this community, we are doing things with the people that God has sovereignly placed in our lives. Like every one of us are in different places every day, and we see different people. So the goal is for us to take this message of hope, this gospel message to the world that is around us, to those who don't believe. And it kind of, when I went through, I was like, yeah, I think we do a lot of this. I mean, even in the midst of this COVID situation that we've got going on, I still think we're reaching out, and I still think we're investing into our lives as a congregation and moving forward. Any questions about our mission statement? Any additional thoughts that you want to add to that? Okay. This is kind of something else. I've talked about this before, but because of where we're at, just in some conversation with ministry leaders, things look different today than they did 3 years ago. So we're in this process of trying to figure out, well, what does this new season look like? And so I've tried to put a little bit of structure to it. The structure is we've got 4 different seasons. I think Sean and I were talking that we've tried to move away from this a little bit, but our culture kind of is this. We've got a lot of kids. We kind of move on this school culture because we've got a lot of teachers and students here. And so we're going to continue just to move into this, especially for 2022. I think this also gives some structure and freedom to people to have that space, to not feel like you've always got to be doing a Bible study or in a discipleship group. And if you want to do that, that's awesome. But the structure of this looks like this. Now, this isn't hard and fast because you'll recognize that August kind of might fall into summer and might be a little bit autumn. So just because school might start the first or second week. So there's a little overlap here. But the general theme of this is we've got 4 seasons within this church that I want us to look at. The season of winter, November, December, January. Let's be honest, it's hard to start a Bible study on December 1st, right? Why? Because we just got done with Thanksgiving and I'm trying to get my Christmas lights up, and it's just the life that we have in our culture. But I still think that we need to be attentive to gather. We've got to find ways in these seasons that are already designed for gathering and hanging out, that's what I want us to be. So as ministry leaders, we've talked about that in the youth group through the summertime. You're not doing the regular teachings, but you're doing gatherings, you're doing fire pits, you're doing s'mores, you're creating connection points that the kids love. The same is going to be true as we move forward. Then the next one, spring. So spring and autumn will be similar, winter and summer will be similar. So the spring and autumn becomes that point where we will start new Bible studies, where we will do an equipping seminar on how to study the Bible, or on apologetics, or maybe a class on parenting. Those will be the seasons in this church that we do tackle some new kinds of things. And so when you look at it, we want to dig in deep. We want to focus on equipping and teaching and studying in the spring and autumn seasons. And then in the winter and summer seasons, we want to gather. Invite people over to your house. Go out to lunch. Go on walks. Go on bike rides. Come here at the church and use the grill and have gathering points that's not as structured around studying the Bible, but it's more structured around studying each other and getting to know folks. Does that make sense? What do you think? Jesse? I'm sorry, no. It's not appropriate. Yeah, so the rule of thumb here, sorry, Jesse, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't have said that to anyone else. So as a church, creating new programs and stuff, that's more of what I'm talking about. But you and 3 other dudes, you're like, let's start studying Galatians more. Absolutely. Like there's no stopping anyone from studying the Bible if that's what the Lord's putting on your heart. But for us as men's ministry, women's ministry, youth ministry, and the others, that's kind of what I'm going to be pushing our ministry leaders to do. it also gives them some expectations on what it looks like in their world. So yes, Jesse, study the Bible. That's someone can take that out of context. I'm going to end up somewhere, and the pastor at Hillside Community Church says, don't study the Bible. So quick updates. Tommy, you want to come up and share a little bit? So part of what we want to do here, we're not going to get into the weeds on everything, but we want to highlight what we see are our main areas of ministries. And then Tommy's going to give, I'm just going to give you this.
Check, 1, 2, check. Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Children's ministry. As we know, for most of the pandemic, we had completely shut that down until about September last year. We started doing some things outside with the elementary school kids. We eventually got a really nice rotation going for really probably the most important part, and that's our nursery. So we start nurturing those kids right after we kind of dedicate them, right after they're born. So that's been great to have a consistency there. And we continue to try to build up rotations for those other classrooms. And ironically, if you haven't heard, we used to have like 6 classrooms, and one of them was for 4 and 5-year-old children. Well, we don't have any of that age. So it's amazing to have that kind of completely shut down still. But so for nursery and for those little 2 and 3-year-olds, those preschoolers, we have full coverage, and it's been great and an awesome blessing that the congregation has stepped up to make sure we have these trusted, not only parents, but members who are there for these children every Sunday. Aside from that, Angela had set up for the last 4 months some Wednesday night dinners out front, or at least in the coffee shop, in conjunction with the women's ministry. So it's been nice to have that fellowship, particularly for the young moms and for the MOPS type effort that we have with other churches. So for the most part, children's ministry is up and running. Right now here in 2022, we have a lot of dealing with less rotations with teachers, whether it's COVID in their homes, the scare of COVID because of the next wave that's come up. We've had a lot of new mommies, which is a wonderful thing, so they need a break. And so there's been a number of things that have come up where we've had less of a rotation, but yet God always provides every Sunday morning. We still have coverage one way or the other. So for a lot of the teachers, they're stepping up doing 2 or 3 times as much. And nobody seems to be burnt out yet. But we just leave that all out to the congregation. No, please keep praying over this ministry. We have found that not only with the rotations that we do, but with the curriculum, wonderful to do what we do on Sunday mornings for an hour, hour and a half, but we still rely on the parents very heavily within their households to be doing the daily devotionals, and we've been passing those out for the last few weeks. While kids are here, we also have that available through our website. So we're really excited about what children's ministry has looked like and this ramp up that we've had really for the last 3-4 months. And we'll just continue to do what we're doing because we do think those days are going to come where there is no more variance and we're simply having a complete normalcy downstairs like we've had on Sunday mornings. So I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell for where we're at with children's ministry.
Thanks, Tom. Angela, how do you do? So, you passed. So with the rest of our ministry areas, I'm not going to bring everyone up and share. Are you sitting there thinking, I hope he doesn't bring me up and share? Ellie's like, he didn't tell me we were sharing. So we're in conversations. I think part of what Tom is mentioning is we're looking to go into 2022 with a new set of passion and focus and making sure that we really move, answering some whys and hows. I think for me, like when I preach, I try to come up here and don't give you shoulds without whys. Like I'm not going to come up here and say, hey, you guys should be doing this without telling you why. And I'm also not going to give you hows without giving you cans. Like you need to do these things. Here's how you can do them. And so part of that with ministry leaders over the next couple of months is we're going to keep working out what that looks like. Elliot and Brian with men's ministry and our women's ministry and our youth and others, we're going to get together and we're just going to continue to, on a regular basis, make sure we talk through what we want this next season to look like. Some of the words that have come to my mind as I've been looking at what our ministries look like, some of these are, you're like, organized, but yeah, I want us to be organized in the way that we're communicating to people. I want us to be organized in the way that we're moving through our purpose and direction within each of our areas. So if you look at something like hospitality, and we've got a lot of people who serve on the hospitality team. Michelle is very involved. There is organization that goes into making sure we do barbecues. There's organization that goes into making sure we have coffee and bagels. And Ginny Ward in the back there, there's organization going on right now in providing meals for many of the families that are having children or in the hospital or dealing with things that are going on. So we've got to be organized in what we do, and I also want us to be very intentional, meaning we're not going to just do things to say that we're doing things. That's kind of always been who we are at Hillside, but for us, we're going to be challenging ourselves as leaders to make sure the things we are doing are intentional, both for ourselves but also the congregation. Focused, kind of with intentional, but this is more focused on God's plans for us, not my plans. This comes out of that Proverbs 3 verse that I shared about a couple of weeks ago, where I just want our plans to be embedded in God's pleasures, the things that he really wants of us. It'd be very easy in a business meeting to start talking about the strategies and tactics of which we're going to accomplish things. There will be strategies, we will be organized, we will be intentional, but our focus is going to be remaining upon who God is in our world. Relational. I think this, for me, continues to be really important. And God's put the John 13 verse on my heart that we would love each other. Relationships right now, especially coming out of COVID. Now, many of you here who are part of what's going on, we still have a vast group of people that are online who are still reluctant to come back, and we understand that. But relationship for us as a congregation is going to continue to be important moving into 2022, making sure that we create the environments where we're building those relationships. Consistency for me is huge. Continuing to show up, doing what you say you're going to do, and that's going to be an expectation that we continue to have in our ministry areas, that there is a sense of consistency, that this congregation can trust and know that if we say we're going to do something, it will be done. And so that's something we're going to really work hard on. Continuity is also a unique thing that I really think, and us as leaders have been talking about, like, how do we have continuity amongst all of our sermons? You know, we planned out all the way through the end of Galatians. We're assigning people and we're talking through it to make sure that one Sunday builds on the next. Well, the same is true in ministries. We're going to work hard to get men's and women's together, kind of what Angela did with the women's ministry and the kids. Let's do some things that bring continuity, that bring that connection points between different groups so that we're not all off on our silos doing things. Growing, I think this goes in two things. Growing both us as a congregation, inviting people to be part of what we're doing so that we can continue to reach this community around us, but growing in maturity as well as followers of Jesus. And we talked about the courageous verse that we spoke of that was given to Joshua, be strong and courageous and know that the Lord your God goes with you. So I want us to, even going into 2022, like, how is courageous one of the words? Well, we're still in a pandemic. How do we be courageous in the things that we're doing? Donovan's trying to plan mission trips. Going to another country sounds pretty courageous right now, doesn't it? It's just different. It's hard enough as it is, but it's going to take courage for us as a congregation to show up and do some things that on our focus, God says, this is what I want you to do. Just you being here today and this congregation being as full as it was based upon all we're seeing with the I can't even say it right. What is it called? Omicron, whatever it is. There's courage in that. So what does that look like for us? And just continuing to love each other. So these are some words that hopefully all of our ministry leaders will start to think through, that I and our leadership team will start to work through as we move forward in areas like men's ministry. Like, what does it look like to be loving and courageous in men's ministry? What does it look like to be consistent, to create continuity? Highlights also, I'll stop there. Jesse, any questions? And you're allowed to read the Bible and any of that too. So, any questions about any of these areas or things you want to know about a particular ministry area? Yeah, well, if something comes up, ask. Yes, Jesse. A little bit. I think probably more continuity between children's ministry and youth ministry would be more of that. And so the curriculum we've set in children's, it's pretty much locked in. They're not going through Galatians right now. But there will be continuity when families get together for life groups. And there will be continuity when spouses get together and talk about things when they're grabbing dinner together. So we're working on that a little bit more, but probably not that deep. Good question. All right. I thought this was good too, just highlighting our ministry partners. As Gus, our founding pastor, he is Gus Gill, founding pastor. We had to figure out what name to put on the website, and he's like, founding pastor? You're the founding pastor. He's really focusing on the Together Church of Golden right now. And he is, with a couple others, started gathering us back together in weekly prayer and meals. So there's a lot of ministry partnerships that we have that flow out of Hillside, from what you allow me to do in the area of chaplaincy, what you allow Dan to do in the area of chaplaincy. I mean, we're your pastors, and we get paid by this church, but one of those partnerships has allowed me to be in Louisville for the last week and to be able to help people in other environments. And so there's a lot of those ministry partnerships that go on. I know there's more that aren't on this list because we all, hopefully in our different areas, have a ministry partnership mindset that starts to flow out of what it is that God's placed us in. But we're going to continue to push all of us to be involved in moving towards our passions in the things that we do. So, I don't know if you guys know this, but Iker this year started serving on the Fellowship of Christian Athletes board. One of the ministries that we've become involved with on the Mines campus. And so he was a coach, and Will goes to Mines. And so Will's in back cheering. That's a passion of ministry partnership that we want to continue to see flow from our congregation, but also from our leadership. So these are a couple. Donovan's going to talk more about missions and outreach stuff, but I just want to show you that these are still things that we're passionate about, that this church is having direct impact in. I think just also making sure that you know we're trying to navigate this COVID situation with as much thoughtfulness as we can possibly have. I just was looking at this last night. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this chart, but this is the chart by the Colorado Department of Health on COVID. So when you talk about there's a spike that's been going on, that's a big spike right there. Because at the start, right around Christmas time, we were only seeing about 861 cases a day. And as of January 6th, we're seeing nearly 20,000 cases a day. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different, but I show you this to say that this has kind of been our history. There's been some ups and downs in this. This congregation has been affected personally. We have seen people in this congregation get really sick. We've seen people in this congregation die. And as we've walked through this, we want to make sure that we continue to create best practices that are safe, but we want to also make sure we continue to pursue the Lord in everything that we do. So I just want you to know that we wrestle through what it is that our expectations are going to be, and we have a couple of us that probably dig it into it a little bit deeper, and then Sean will go off and read the 50 pages of what the state has sent out, and then also read through what Jefferson County has sent out. We're trying to be obedient to the officials that God has placed in and around us, and we're also going to make sure that we continue to pursue the Lord as we move forward. So, any questions about navigating COVID today? Keep doing it. Because we want to respect folks. We believe we've created an environment where wherever you are at, whatever your comfortability or fear level, whatever you want to label it as, there are places within this church for you to be fed and to be connected. And we want to continue to do that. So if you've got comments or you've got things that you want to bring to us, please let me know, or let anyone on the leadership team know. so that we can continue to make sure we are moving with best practices and that we're doing it safely while not giving up what we talked about right here, the things that we're dedicated to. So if even in that, if you feel like we're violating any of those things, I'd really like to hear, because I think these are good conversations to make sure we have. Jess, you can't be the only one asking questions, dude. This is your last one. She's like, all right, did you feed him questions? Here, ask this one. Yeah, no, and that's fair. And as you speak, there's probably a handful of people that are completely in disagreement with you. So that's the interesting part of us navigating as leaders, to make sure that we're attentive to, Jesse, what you believe, but also what we've also heard from others that don't necessarily hold the same beliefs that you have. So the dynamic for us as a congregation is making sure that we move in a safe way, that we do listen and hear. I think that we've done a pretty good job to this point. I've listened to stories from other congregations where it has not gone well, and there's been church splits and divisions. So when I say what we're going to continue to do, I want us to make sure we move in a way where we are having healthy conversations, where if you got things that you want to talk about, that you've been given opportunities to come and talk to me about, come talk to me about them. If you disagree with things that we're doing, bring them up, because I want to hear. Because right now where we're at is we're going to continue to honor the mandates that are in our county for us. We're trying to do it the best we can, but I'm up front here speaking without a mask on, and you're sitting there speaking without a mask on, and I'm not asking you to leave today. So I feel like we're doing well at trying to manage through them. Even the other day, someone suggested we need some extra space, or makes sense. Let's space these chairs out. Let's make sure we continue to have the overflow. Let's make sure that we have the online options. Let's make sure that we do everything we possibly can. I've never done this before. I've never managed or pastored a church through COVID. So every week seems to provide some new issues and difficulties. And so yes, and for those who disagree with it, Jesse just said, yes, we're going to try to make sure as a congregation we move in unity so that we don't violate who we believe God has called us to be. So we can keep talking offline and all that stuff. I'd love to. And anyone else that wants to talk about any of that, I'm an open. We'll sit down and we'll process any of it. I've done that with a few people already. And I'm not 100% right on any of this. I don't think anyone can say that with all certainty, except you, Jesse, because that's how God's wired you. So it's okay. So with that, we'll keep moving through the COVID stuff. I'm going to bring Donovan up here, and he's going to... Okay. Yeah. Sorry. If you got questions, I'll give you a handheld mic. So just come grab this if you want to talk so people online can hear you. But I'm going to move us to just looking a little bit at missions and outreach, and Donovan's going to come up and walk us through these things. Mm-hmm.
Should be 23 or 24.
Check. Here we go. This is exciting to look back and reflect. I took a bunch of time this week just looking back, and I think for many of you guys, well, a lot of you, I've known some of you over 20. This is our 23rd year being here, so that's pretty wild. That's a wild thought to me. But even among our missionaries, we've got folks that we've known for 10, 15, and more than 20 as well. So it is pretty cool looking at the longevity. Part of what I wanted to share is one of our main focuses in missions is just having that relational focus, and that was demonstrated to us when Gus and I and Mike and Kevin and those early on would have coffee, and we would I would come, and I've shared this before, I would come somewhat frustrated sometimes, thinking, hey, we've got an agenda, we got things we got to get through. And Gus would be there to listen, and we'd talk through and chew on life, and I'd kind of leave a little frustrated thinking we didn't talk about any of the things on my list. And then through the week I'd look back and I'm like, oh, we did actually talk about all these different things. And it was such a impact for me and Beth and how we live our life. And that was one of those things I just wanted to highlight again. This relational focus of missions, showing our workers value, significance, and security. That's one of our big priorities. And I love, Kev, that you brought it up again. Just that challenge to love well. When it comes to our body, and even our workers abroad, they'll know us by our love. To me, that's just a huge challenge. I think part of the joy in looking at this longevity of relationship is that invitation to journey as well. There's, I think it was either Kevin or Gus mentioned this the other day from the pulpit, just how that invitation to process, to pray through the decisions. Oh, you said that this morning. See my brain's working there. That process or that challenge to walk together. Like if someone's thinking about a big decision, us as pastors, we don't want to just, hey, I came through and I decided I'm going to go do this and this. Well, look at the trajectory, look at the relationship. Let's pray about those things together. That is part of our role as pastors. So when I look back at our missionaries and our works overseas, it is pretty exciting to think all the areas that we've been able to be a part of, especially in those big transitions. I'm going to hit some real high-level stuff. I'm not going to get too deep, but I will try to go quicker. And it was also interesting in looking back. Most of our areas of ministry focus have to do with children, evangelism, and discipleship. That's just kind of as I look at big categories, to me that was an interesting observation. But specifically Nicaragua, again, Kevin and Sean were, reminiscing Guinea-Bissau being on this chicken island, thinking we're across the world, off the coast of Africa. Where is this place that we can partner with as Hillside and make our connections, make our home? And looking back now, having been partnered with amazing people in Nicaragua for over 15 years, that really has become our family away from America. So that really is one of our biggest focuses as a body. Which leads us into those trips. We haven't been able to go in a few years. That's killing us. There's so much value in our trips. And I'm a little bit worried, in that longevity, that we've got a bit of a population of our teenagers that haven't gone in years. We've tried, and it hasn't worked. We've tried, it hasn't worked. So that's one of the things to be praying about. Pray that we can get these trips going again. There's one, Flax are contemplating something in May. If you are interested, come talk to me or Katie. But we've been super impressed. I know we've shown a bunch of videos about Nicaragua, so I'm not going to get too deep. But we've got more students coming on Saturdays. They've got 24 students coming in the morning, 24 in the afternoons. Again, computer, English classes. The scholarships for those that have already graduated out of high school that are going into college, more discipleship for those ones that we have engaged with years, because now we are, it's been, again, 10, 15 years that we've seen these kids. more Bible training, computer and English and core subjects. So continue to be praying for them. Our staff, again, since we transitioned from working specifically with these boys on the streets to starting this school and engaging with the families, it has seen so much more joy. Den and Emma have been a huge joy for us as well. This is again one of those couples that we've invested deep with relationally, been able to process through what it looks like as they've been pastoring. They've recently started a new ministry, Amber. It's addictions and counseling ministry. Be praying for them this year. They've got more events, more conferences and things that they're hosting, more counseling. So yeah, just continue to be praying for them. Again, I'm gonna just go in high level. Come talk to me if you want more information. Again, looking at the investment and relationship with the Tipton Weederwall clan. Amazing how foundational these last years have been for them. They've moved not only the full ministry and the studio and the whole family from Morocco to Spain, but they've had to go through all the nuts and bolts of, driver's license. It's just this long-going thing. Partnerships with ministry there between the Christian Christian Missionary Alliance and then Horizons International. So developing that partnership there, honoring the request of them spending a grueling year of language, and coming to this place again of now, how do they use the studio, which was the main focus in Morocco, again, still in alignment of content creation. And Scott has just published a book of his own testimony of becoming an atheist, or from when he was an atheist to becoming a believer. So again, still diving into video teaching. The things that have marked them are evangelism and discipleship. And it's just awesome to see how they're at this place laying this foundation. And honestly, when my boys and we went there the February before COVID hit, such vision and excitement for this body. What a launching place in Spain to be able to get to the Middle East, to Northern Africa and Europe. And so I'm excited to see where this will continue to grow for us. Continue to be praying for them. Luke, again, this testimony of digging in relationship and prayer. So Kevin and I had really challenged Luke years back, having served all up and down Africa with all these different organizations, said, listen, maybe we need to pray about you raising support again, so you'll have a stability and that we can really get behind you and not all the transitions of these different organizations and the rules they have in place. And so last year, as you remember, he was with us through COVID, raising support, getting the plans together. And we launched him in May of last year, and it was just totally overwhelming. Even looking back now, his finances are in a better place than they've ever been. He's with joy working at this ministry in Gulu, Uganda. They're creating this city park for all these youth to be able to have training, Bible education. If you remember the video they showed a while back, there was not one park in Gulu for these kids after the wars have gone through there. And so this is a real push of hope. Construction, shockingly, is taking longer than he would have hoped. So they had really projected that it would be done or ready to go here, this summer, but things are going to continue to push back. His focus, though, is on the Christian training programming, investing with the pastor, the youth groups in the area. So he is continuing to build those relationships, continue to get the programming side while the construction is also working. Jesse, I'm going to speak on your behalf. So for those of you who were here when was it, December, beginning of December, we had a pie night with Jesse. And it was just an awesome time to hear, again, someone who we've dug in relationally, we've dug deep, praying through seasons, praying through different transitions in the Ukraine. A big highlight was in the midst of coaching and discipleship and investing in youth in Ukraine, he is the same Jesse here, having moved back. Same Jesse, coaching, digging in with youth. He's offered a full-time job at Faith Christian Academy, which he said yes. So I just love, Jesse, your heart again for just the consistency of pursuing the Lord and bringing kids and others to his kingdom. So it's just awesome. So lots of exciting, I guess the trajectory again, looking back, exciting just to see how the Lord has led us relationally through missions. And then lastly, regarding overseas is, exciting to me, as I pray through, hey, what's the new thing? Who are the new folks that are headed out? Because we do all have, like Kevin said, invested relationships, even our own personal families of people that you're, sponsoring, getting behind. But in our body, who are some of those new folks? And so it's just encouraging to me to hear Zach and Chelsea the other day sharing about going to Egypt. So continue to be praying for them, and then also for our own kids, for our own body. What's the new thing? What's God stirring in your hearts? Where are those different places that he's leading you? Overseas and then locally. And I think as we look locally here on the outreach, on our outreach front, again, lots of opportunities, especially between November and Christmas. So many places to get involved with Salvation Army. Again, we got MOPS happening, Operation Christmas Child, different clothes swap, and then with the Minds, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Anchor Nights, and there's others that aren't mentioned here. But it's just exciting. We've got a lot of opportunity to invest in our community, and that's really, again, one of those things that just excites me about our body is we are living active and engaged. And that's probably, for me, that's just one of the most exciting things, that we're all in this thing together. Okay, enough for me. Questions? Comments? Snide remarks? Yes. Not snide remarks, you don't have to. Yeah. I mean, you can. Yeah, let's pass the microphone. This is for the online folks.
Maybe this isn't the proper place to ask this, but can you tell me about the Salvation Army Golden Extension a little bit?
I can tell you a little bit. Actually, not a lot. Kevin probably can talk more about that.
Yeah, so for years, we as a community have just worked together to make sure we provide for the needs of our transient community. And so long ago, the Salvation Army has allowed us to do the bell ringing thing. And we ring the bell. I think this year it was at Walgreens and King Soopers, and all the money that's raised stays in the community. Calvary Episcopal Church are the overseers of it. There is a way for us as pastors to do referrals. There's also a way for the police department to do referrals for people to access those funds. And so we realize that as a community, as a church of Golden, it would be good for us to move together to understand how we can best serve maybe those who are less privileged or those that need a little help. And so that's what that has become for us. Did I do that good, Dan? Okay. Yeah, and we'll keep doing it. It's just really cool that we've got a group of churches that are willing to work together, that will pray together and eat together and make sure we support each other. But also we found that it was good too, because you get someone who might go to 6 churches, and now we're all kind of going through the same hub, and we're able to help people, I think, a little bit better and more specifically. Does that help? Okay. Yeah? Andrea?
Other questions?
Huh? Jeff? Oh. Perfect. Thanks, Andrea. So all these areas are hopefully areas that will continue to grow, but most of this now falls underneath Donovan's leadership. So the whole missions and outreach component are things that he's going to be directly involved with, overseeing and leading for us as a congregation. So if you've got things that kind of fall in that realm, make sure you include them. That's one thing. It might not be something that gets on a list somewhere, because we all have things that we're doing, but it's good to kind of hear his words and kind of figure out how he thinks that might look and different ways to maximize what those things look like. Fair? Because he is a maximizer. So this is where it gets awkward for just somebody. I don't know. Look at that picture. Is that 6 years together? I think it's 6 days. 6 days. So really what I want to point out is, Izzy, you've not changed at all. Dave, that's a whole other story, buddy. So we are a congregationally elder-run church. And so when you look at our articles of incorporation, there are a few things that we vote on a regular basis: finances, hirings, different things that we do that might be an encumbrance above a certain percentage of our budget, and also the voting in of elders. And so part of what we do here is, Dave has been, how long have you been meeting with us, Dave? It's been over a year and a half now? Somewhere around there? So Dave has been in our elders meetings for quite some time, and mostly just part of the way that people become leaders is we just want to be with you. We want to see life done. We want to watch how you respond to difficult situations. We want to have conversations about, what do you think the world says? What do you think God says? And so Dave has been part of that process. Dave and Izzy have also been part of our leadership meetings now. We meet as a leadership team monthly, second Sunday of the month. It's been a little hit and miss with COVID, but they are part of that leadership team as well. So today, I just want to give you a quick little highlight of what eldership looks like. And the first phrase that it talks about in Titus 1 says, an elder must be blameless. So that's when most of us who have become elders and leaders in the church are like, well, that's not me. And that was also Dave's response to this. It's like, I don't know that I'm qualified for this, because there are some pretty strict qualifications. But that's also part of what we've really loved about walking with you, Dave, is your humility, your ability to address what's really going on in your life. So as we come here, and we as leaders, like what Gus preached about today, it is by the grace of God that we are here. And we recognize that also as we move into selecting of elders. Dave, we know you're not perfect, but we also know that you are faithful to your wife. You're faithful to your children. You are not, well, this one might be in question, Izzy, you can answer this one. Wild at times, a little bit crazy, or disobedient. And you skip down a little bit, it kind of gives things that you're not supposed to be. It says, rather, hospitable. You should be hospitable, one who loves what is good, who is self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. And so as we've journeyed with Dave, these are the things that we see in his life. These are the things that we resonate with as journeying together. And so one of the requirements, though, is he says Dave's never allowed to have a microphone if he moves into this position. That might change down the road, so we'll get him voted in, and then we'll start working on the fine print. But do you have any questions about eldership? I don't know if I open this up. Any questions for Dave? Or just anything around this? If not, you can cast your votes on that. But just want to let you know kind of how that works, and that this is the time. If you've got questions about Dave, Izzy, their family, and just what eldership looks like, you can ask. Right.
Why can't Dave have the microphone?
Because that wild part right there, it's unpredictable. Got to stay on script. Awesome. So that's the first voting thing. The next, I'm going to bring up Sean. We're going to transition computers, and he's going to kind of take over the reins.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to just spend a few minutes talking about kind of some of the business acts. What did I say? Months. Did I say months? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Take a few minutes to. Well, there's no Bronco game. You're not going anywhere. So, we'll just take a few minutes to talk about some of the business aspects of the church, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I want to start with The facility stuff, we had a very generous donation that came in, and we have a great facility here, and it is worth a lot. It's in a great location, and over the years, it's just been a joy to be part of this, to see the kind of the evolution of this building and the way we use this building. For those of you who remember the old coffee shop, and 7 or 8 years ago when we redid the coffee shop, and then the basement below us was just a storage room, basically. It was unfinished, and now it's completely finished and great for children's ministry. So over the years, we've had donations that have come in, and that's when we've done those big projects. And we had a big donation, a very generous donation come in 2021 that was allocated or really designated for facilities. And it was just wonderful to get, and allowed us to do a lot of things because we had a lot of deferred maintenance around here. There was just things that needed to be done that we just didn't have the funds to do. So here's some of the things we did in 2021 with those funds. There was a major concrete issue and drainage issue behind the building that we fixed. The siding on the back of the next building over, the coffee shop building, used to be basically just painted plywood, and it was peeling and it was falling apart, so it's all been sided. We repaired a bunch of cracks and heaves out in the parking lot. We bought all the picnic tables and the grill, which has been awesome through COVID, in the place of potlucks, doing our barbecues. We bought this new lectern, which has been really nice. And there's still some funds left. We didn't spend it all. So this year, 2022, we're going to be doing some other large facility projects. One of the big ones is getting all new sanctuary chairs. Praise the Lord. You've all been sitting there for a couple hours now with church in this, and you can feel it, right? It's that thin piece of cloth on a piece of plywood, basically, right now. So we are getting new chairs. We ordered those a couple months ago, but with all the worldwide supply issues, it's about a 20-week lead time. So we're looking at mid-February still. So we're hoping in about a month we will be getting our new sanctuary chairs in. We're going to be doing a refresh on the playground. We're going to be doing some repairs to the retaining wall out here that's right along the parking lot. If you look at it, it's really starting to lean precariously, and it's a little concerning, so we're going to repair that. And then we're also going to be doing some dreaming for the future. As I mentioned, the basement down below us and the coffee shop next door was the result of large donations, very generous donations that came in. Now we're looking and praying, like we had done for those for years. We're praying about the old basement, the area under the old sanctuary under the coffee shop. It really needs to be updated. So we're in the process of doing some conceptual designs for that. We've already got some preliminary drawings done, and we're kind of getting to the point where we're ready to take it to an architect if and when the Lord provides the money for us to do that project. So those are some of the things we're doing with the facility. Talk about a couple of financial milestones in 2021. The first being is that we paid off our mortgage. Praise the Lord. So yes, every year in these meetings, I've been kind of tracking the mortgage pay down over, and just seeing it get better and better and closer and closer. We began the year with a balance of $57,000 on our mortgage, which represents about $3,700 a month payment. We ended the year with a balance of $0. It was paid off in December. We're working on all the documentation, the release of deed of trust, all that kind of stuff. We had over $4,000 come in specifically for the mortgage. We never kind of came before you all and asked for money for that, but there were people that had talked to us over the years and said, hey, we'd really like to help. If you ever get to this point, let us know. And so we had some meetings, we put out some emails, things like that, and just really letting people know what our heart was to pay off the mortgage and really go into the year debt-free. And so about $4,100 was given directly for that, which helped us out, and then we took the rest out of our general fund. And this is a fun story, an interesting story of how that happened. It was mid-December, and for the months leading up to this, the last 3 or 4 months before this, we were pretty confident with where we were at financially. We're like, we can do this, we can go into the next year with a surplus, even after paying off the mortgage. And then on the day we had to decide to pay off the mortgage, it was around December 15th, I looked at the financials, and we were going to end up with a $3,000 deficit at the end of the year if we paid off the mortgage. And so we looked at it and we're like, wow, maybe we shouldn't do this. But several people from different kind of corners talked about really taking a step of faith, that we've been praying about this, we've been wanting to do this for years, we felt like this was the year to do it, And we decided in that meeting to take a step of faith and to pay off the mortgage. And we paid it off the next day. I called the accountant, said, send the check, let's get this done. And then like within the next 2 weeks, money just started pouring into the church. It was incredible. It was like God opened up the heavens. He was just waiting for us to make that decision and really trust him. And he has blessed us incredibly. And so we are actually going into the new year with a fairly significant surplus, which we didn't think we were going to have when we made that decision. So praise the Lord. Sometimes we just got to give our finances, whether it's a church or personal, we just got to trust the Lord with it and see what he will do. And it's very exciting to see when he comes through like that. It's been a huge blessing. So again, thank you for those that have been praying for it. Thank you for those that gave toward it. And just thank you for those that support our church financially, just in the general way, because that has enabled us to do that. The second big milestone that we really haven't talked about that much is that we got a PPP loan, the Payroll Protection Program loan, back in 2020 with COVID. And that was all forgiven in 2021. We went into it knowing that there was a chance we were going to have to pay it back, but it was actually very helpful to have those funds during COVID. We used them for mortgage interest and for utilities and for payroll and all that. And we found out in 2021 we went through the process for forgiveness and had all of that forgiven. So that was a huge blessing as well. So 2021 had a couple of big milestones. So now I want to quickly look at the 2022 budget. And just a reminder, our budget process is really an attempt to be the best stewards that we can with the resources that God gives us. We come up with plans, and they're very detailed. I've got spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet, on this stuff. We have a full budget all laid out, category by category. And we're very transparent with that. If you want to see any of that, I'm not going to present all that detail today, but it's available. And if you want to see that, just let me know, and I'll walk you through it. But at the same time, going through all of that detail, we also hold on to that loosely. We know that things change. We know that, now we know that pandemics happen and giving goes up and down and, there's financial challenges and economic challenges. So we build these so that we have a plan to work from and we have a plan to derive from. So we, if things change, we can move and we know what those impacts are going to be. So that's, we know this isn't going to look exactly the same next year, and our actuals are not going to be exact to our budget. But we have learned that ultimately, while it's important to make plans like this, it's really more about trusting God with it in the long term. But we want to be good stewards and make plans. So this is a kind of a very high level view of the finances for 2021, and it's kind of a comparison of 2020 and 2021, and then we'll get into the 2022 budget. But I'm just going to hit some of the high points on this slide. General fund giving was about $425,000 for this year, which is just amazing. It's about a 2.5% increase over last year, over 2020. And when you think about it, in a church this size with a couple hundred people, that's a lot of money that comes in, and we're very grateful for God's provision through all of you. Expenses came in at about $456,000, so obviously our expenses were higher than our giving, but fortunately we came into the year in relatively good shape with a surplus from last year. I'll talk about some of the variances and where some of those expenses were higher when I get to the monthly numbers. So we had that end of the year variance of about $30,000, but again, we're still in good shape going into the new year. And then the last thing I want to just touch on here is the support account giving and the Nicaragua giving. So we had another $80,000+ that comes in for support accounts. So for example, when Jesse was serving in Kiev, money would come in for him, and then we would hold it in a designated account, and then we would pay it out to him on a monthly basis. And then if he had greater needs, we would pay that out as well. We do the same thing for Luke. Money comes in for the pastors, money comes in for the various ministries and such. And we hold those in designated support accounts so they don't get mixed in with our general funds and spent on something else. So over $80,000 came through the church this month just in that. And then Nicaragua giving was over $40,000. So even aside from all this other stuff, money coming in specifically for Nicaragua was about $42,000. So all told, we had over $500,000, about $550,000 come through the church, which again is remarkable to see all that support, especially when you consider we're in the midst of a pandemic, and a lot of churches are really, really struggling right now. This is just a snapshot of the monthly giving, and the main thing here, we budgeted about $34,750 a month for giving. The average giving was about $35,469, so a little higher than we expected, which was great. And you can see sort of the variability here. A lot of these months have a negative variance, which means giving was lower than what we expected to come in. So 7 of the 12 months have negative numbers in it. But again, we came into the year with a healthy surplus, and 3 of the months, January, August, and December specifically, we had huge months, which kind of carried us, and basically made up for the rest of the year. So this is one of the challenges that we deal with as a leadership team, is dealing with that kind of variability. It's like a lot of businesses, honestly. You can't predict, how much income you're going to have every single month. And there is seasonality to your income as well. And some months are really good and some months aren't so good, a little lower than you expected. And so you have to manage that cash flow. In the past, probably up to about 3 years ago, this was much more challenging because we always came into the year kind of just barely getting by, and then we'd have to deal with the variability, and we've had to, when we had a bad month, we'd have to lower the pastor's salaries because that's where we took the hit. And then when we had a good month, we would try to make up those salaries from a few months ago when we cut them. And so we had this variability. But now that we're kind of at this point, the Lord has brought us to this new point, we haven't had to do that. We haven't had to cut pastor salaries for 3 years now. So we've been able to manage through this variability just by having a little bit of extra cash on hand, and that helps us to manage that cash flow issue as it comes to us. This is a snapshot or a picture of our kind of a typical month. This is an average month. So this is everything averaged out over a month for our general fund. So again, giving we budgeted $34,750, but we had $35,469 come in on a monthly basis. So we were a little above average. And as you can see, we were above average on giving, but we were also above our budget on expenses, okay? And I'm trying to find my cursor here so I can, whoops. Sorry, I need to get to my notes and I can't, there it is. So we were a little higher on expenses. It was kind of interesting this year to how this all came about. Several areas, some of the key areas, you see a variance under the monthly expenses here. So for example, on building and land, our property insurance jumped quite a bit this year. So that was not something we anticipated with our budget for last year. We didn't know that that was coming. So property insurance went up. And we had some extra maintenance things to do around the church aside from the big facility projects. Payroll, the variance on payroll, payroll is basically exactly as we budgeted, but we had some extra come in for pastor appreciation and pastor bonuses and things like that. So it actually hit our payroll expense, even though the money came in elsewhere, and looks like a variance. Ministry expenses, this was one that basically resulted from us kind of getting back into ministry and functioning more in ministry sooner than we had anticipated. So last December, we were, in the midst, we were in, we still are in the midst of COVID, but it seemed, we were really, really curtailed on our activities. And we were kind of thinking, okay, maybe it'll be June, July, August before we really get back into the swing of things. But we actually started more like February, March, April. And we started with the barbecues, and we started getting bagels again, and things like that we thought we budgeted for much later in the year. So a lot of these extra expenses came from really just re-engaging sooner than we had anticipated. Under missionary support, which is kind of our biggest variance, that was basically the majority of that variance is the $7,500 that we as elders decided to give to Nicaragua for the van. So the money, remember we went through that whole thing of getting them a new van. Well, we committed to give out of our general fund for that, and it basically hit this missionary support line. So that was the biggest sum there. And then operations was just stuff, again, part of it was kind of coming back together as a church sooner than we thought. So our utility bills started going back up a little bit, water, electric, gas, things like that. And then the other big thing here is the bank fees. This is one that we've tried to predict all along, and something started out just a few years ago. But with online giving, there's actually some pretty significant fees with those gifts. So for example, if you do your gifts by cash or check or online bill pay or stock transfers, there's no transaction fee. But if you do it by ACH or credit card or PayPal, now we have a transaction fee. And these bank fees are part of our operations expense. Okay. So we were kind of off a little bit when we estimated those, that they were a little bit higher than what we anticipated. So that's, I mean, in some ways it's a good thing. That means giving is higher, but then we also have higher bank fees. So we want to encourage you to consider this with your giving. We love the convenience of online giving. It's been a blessing to us as well, and I know it's a blessing to you. But like, for example, Christy and I, we do our giving via bill pay through US Bank, and there's no fees associated with that. So if the credit card or PayPal, if that's just the way you want to do it, that's totally fine. But if you do have other options, please consider this as you're thinking through that. And one thing I want to mention here, something we don't really talk about much, is these stock gifts. We had 2 significant stock gifts come into the church in December. And we are all set up for this. We have an investment account already set up with KeyBank, and the stock, basically, if you want to donate stock, you can donate it to us. It goes into our investment account. I liquidate it immediately, so we don't speculate with this stuff. We just, once we get it in, we liquidate it. And then we let you know how much the proceeds were. And it's a super easy way to donate, and it's also a very tax advantageous way for you to donate. Okay, so there's a lot of tax advantages. So if you're interested in that possibility of giving stock or any other type of assets, please talk to me, because we're set up for that, and we'd be willing to do that with you. So that's our how we perform. This is basically the proposed budget, which is what we'll be voting on today for 2022. You can see giving, we have basically suggested an increase, a very modest increase on what we expect giving to come in. So you can see the actual per month was $35,469 for the year. We're going to bump it up slightly from what we budgeted last year, but we're going to still be pretty conservative about giving. We recognize that we can't always count on the same level of giving year to year, so we're very conservative about increasing what we think our income will be. Building and land is pretty much the same as what we're budgeting last year, and we will no longer have any mortgage interest coming out of this section. That's why it's lower than what we have as the actual for 2021. Payroll expense is increasing because of the reduction in the mortgage. We looked at several different ways that we can use that money. As I said, it was $3,700 a month that we were spending on our mortgage. And so we really looked at and prayed and considered how we would use that money. We looked at using it for missions, we looked at using it for facilities, we looked at using it for salaries and things like that, and we've kind of spread it out in those areas. And one of the areas that we're bumping up is payroll. Payroll expense, over the years, we don't do even cost of living adjustments on a regular basis. We occasionally try to bump people up. You know, one year Kevin will get a bump, and the next year Donovan, and we just try to manage that and keep that payroll number very conservative. But here we had an opportunity to get people to a level of payroll, and then we're also starting, this number also includes some retirement benefits and some healthcare benefits. So right now they're just kind of allowances that we're using to help people with healthcare and retirement, but we're starting to build up, actually getting to the point where we can provide healthcare coverage for our pastors and things like that. So we're moving in those directions. So those are the main reasons that this number went up pretty substantially, is due to some salary increases, retirement benefits, and healthcare, which we haven't had in the past. Actually, I've got the healthcare and retirement as a separate line. Housing allowance goes up slightly. This is just something that as pastors we can take some of our salary as housing, which has tax benefits to it. So we just kind of could adjust to that on an individual level each year. Ministry expenses, we are increasing that. We're going to have, all year bagels. We're going to have our barbecues, our potlucks, things like that. So that number's up a little bit. Missionary support actually went down slightly, but increased for almost everyone. So the reason it went down slightly is Jesse has been on support with us for years. Okay, and we've been a major supporter. And now that he is back, and at least for this period of time, this season, we are not going to be supporting him directly as a church. He's now working full-time for Faith Christian Academy. And we basically have increased everyone else. We increased the Nicaragua giving, Den and Emma, Libby Noth with FCA, and Luke Runyon. We increased all of those, but we decreased Jesse on that. And also, there's no money for the Nicaragua van in this number as well, so it actually goes down slightly, even though we raised almost everyone's support. And then we increased our operating expense budget by a little bit, again, to anticipate gas and electric charges and some of these bank fees that continue to go up. And then the mortgage principal number is now 0, which is really a blessing. So, bottom line on the budget, again, as I said, we have a lot of detail, a lot of thought that goes into this, but we also hold on to it loosely. We trust God, and we are going to manage to whatever comes in and make adjustments as we go forward. These are the missionaries that we're currently supporting. So if you go back to that missionary support line, we support the Tipton Weederwall clan in Spain. We support Luke. We support Adan and Emma Valle in Nicaragua, the Youth with Hope Ministry in Nicaragua, Libby Nueth in Golden, and then also Neighborhood Rehab Project. So we are continuing to support a number of missions. And we also, in addition to this, I mean, obviously Donovan's primary role is as missions pastor, and we have all that income that comes in through Hillside. We're unique in that we don't charge any sort of administrative fees on that. A lot of churches and organizations will charge a 5% or 10% or 15% fee to administer those funds, but we don't do any of that. We consider that part of what we do as a church and don't charge our missionaries to run their support through us. So all told, we have well over $100,000 coming through the church for missionary support, which is really cool because this is a missions-based church. So, any questions on any of that? I know it's a lot of numbers, and I'd be happy to sit down with anyone who's interested in more detail. But any questions on the broad brushstrokes of the budget before you consider voting on it? Yeah. I'll just repeat the question, that's all right. Yeah, so the question is, especially with paying off the mortgage, do we want to put more money into normal maintenance and just set money aside and make sure we don't have more deferred maintenance down the road? Is that accurate? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We did increase the normal maintenance budget a little bit, and we do anticipate that. We also, as I mentioned, have the money that came in last year that we're going to be using. So most of the money we spend on the facility this year will be coming from that donation, from that bucket, if you will. And we'll take care of a lot of those main issues like the playground. We could spend a lot of, do a lot of little things on the playground, with normal operating funds, or we could do kind of a major project. So we're going to attack it more like that. But yes, we do have money set aside for normal maintenance. We do have more work that we'll be doing just on the smaller projects, more work days, things like that. So we do have money set aside for that. Yeah, great question. Anything else? Nope. Okay. So we will go ahead and vote now if you haven't already. You should, as a member, have received an email online. You guys should have that as well. That email went out to all members. Just go ahead and vote yes or no on the 22 budget and the new elder, Mr. David Eicher and Ms. Izzy Eicher. We are excited to have them on the leadership team, and we hope you see that the same way. So. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's good to know.
Yeah, Kevin wanted me to share a little bit more about kind of the financial situation in terms of our surplus and where we're at going into the new year. I mentioned that after we paid off the mortgage, a number of very generous gifts came in. We had a great December in terms of giving, and it put us into a position where we actually have cash in our general operating fund going into the new year that will, again, hopefully help smooth things out throughout the year. That's not a position we have enjoyed over the years. It's something that's more recent phenomenon, which is, again, a huge blessing. We also have a significant amount of funds set aside in, for example, ministry accounts. I mentioned the support accounts for individuals. We have money set aside. Actually, even though we're not supporting Jesse anymore, he still has money in his support account from his supporters over the year that's accumulated in his account. So if he wants to take a trip to Nicaragua, a ministry trip, we can use money from that support account to do that. And we have that for a number of different people in leadership and in ministry. We also, what we started doing several years ago was setting aside money each month for specific ministries like children's, youth, women's, men's, worship, young adults, etc. And what used to happen is we would budget for children's ministry. We'd budget $300 a month for children's ministry. And then when it came time to buy something for children's ministry and they wanted to buy curriculum, we'd realize, well, we spent that $300 on something else because we never set the money aside. It got budgeted. And you guys can probably all relate to this a little bit in your personal budgets. You set money aside, you think you're going to have it, and then all of a sudden something else comes up, the insurance bill comes up, you know, oh, whoa, well, we've got the money over here, so we'll spend it. What we started doing several years ago was actually putting that money aside. So if we set $200 a month for children's, we put it into a designated account for children's and accumulated it. For men's, for women's, for youth, all of those. So we're actually going into the year with all of those accounts well funded, and in some cases we are continuing to support them on a monthly basis as they need it. So there is surplus money. We've got an account that's got over $100,000 of it that's separate, completely separate from our general fund, that is all designated. There's money in there for children, there's money in there for youth, there's money in there for Kevin's support account, Jesse's support account, my support account, for Nicaragua gifts for next Christmas, you know, things that money set aside. So we've gotten to a place where when we budget for something, it actually gets set aside and it ends up as a surplus. Was there anything else you want me to address besides those? Okay, thanks for the reminder on that. So, yes, Beth. Yes. We actually have 3 bank accounts at Key Bank. We have our general operating account, so all the giving that comes in for general fund goes in there, and all our bills go out of there, and so that's all managed. And then we have a missions account, which includes all of these designated accounts, plus it has the general missions money in there, it has Nicaragua money in there, and then there's actually a separate Nicaragua account that we set up a couple years ago that is specifically for the Nicaragua ministry. It just made it a lot easier to not have everything in the same account. So we've got that all separated out. So yeah, good question. Okay, anything else, Kevin, or are we done? All right, well, thank you all for sticking around, staying. There's maybe a little, not much pizza left, but thank you for hanging out with us. Make sure you vote if you're a member, and just keep praying with us. And thank you so much for the part that you play in all this.
Voting is closed. Are we closed? We're so advanced.
I didn't vote yet.
John.
Well, I was talking. I can't do 2 things at once. All right, Dave Eicher.
Seriously.
I mean, the budget's a no-brainer, but
So as of right now, there's no no's or dissenting votes.
so I really gotta hurry.
So everything's passed unanimously. Even if you vote no, it's not going to matter, Sean.